Hey guys, we got a special treat for you today. Today we are going to be visiting an urban garden. These are some friends of ours who have a garden just in a subdivision, and they have planted and grown enough food to support 2 families, a total of 5 people. So super excited to show you. Come with us, we'll go check it out.
So I suppose we can show you some of our tomatoes this year. Michigan was as with a whole bunch of different places in our country, the weather was kind of wacky this year. Fertilizer was a little more expensive, and so our tomatoes kind of from the start didn't turn out exactly the way that we had hoped. We usually plant around 30 or 40 tomato plants every year, and we do pole cherries, we do some heirloom tomatoes, we do San Marzano tomatoes, we do Roma tomatoes. And this year, it got so hot that we had to kind of water things a little more than what we're used to. And so then, right after it was 100 degrees every day for like a week, then all of a sudden temperature dropped, and we got a lot of rain all at once, splashed up on the leaves, the dirt. And so we got blight pretty early. And so the tomatoes weren't able to grow the way that we had hoped, but we're still going to get probably 200 to 250 pints of tomato products from our garden that we use for our house and my parents' house. And so you'll notice as we look at the tomatoes, we intended for all of them to get as tall as the top of the wood, but that didn't happen. They're all indeterminate tomatoes. They're not determinate tomatoes. So in theory, as long as the weather stays good and we trim them, they'll just keep growing and growing. So the first row didn't do that well. The second row is the pole cherry tomatoes, and as you can see, they grew a good 8-9 feet up there, and so those did what they were supposed to, but all the other ones not so much. But they're still producing, and we've harvested probably 5 or 6 times already, and we've canned 3 or 4 times already, and so we'll pick a few more today. We did try to Florida weave them to start with. The problem with doing the Florida weave thing, when you're wrapping the ties around the bottom around the plant as it starts to grow, the problem with that is if you want to trim off the bottom leaves, you can't do that because you'd be cutting the strings. So what we usually like to do is we just put stakes in the ground, and then we tie them up all the way up to the top, and then we just keep adding wood until the end of the year, and then we save that wood for the next time we go around. And so this front row is kind of just basic tomatoes, Better Boy, beefsteak, stuff like that. Middle row is the pole cherries, and you have Rapunzel. Those are cherry tomatoes that are really cool because they kind of grow in a cascading pattern. You get big clumps of them. And then the third row is heirloom tomatoes. Those one I had a lot of trouble with. All different colors this year. We did yellow ones, black ones, red ones. And then the back row is kind of our paste tomatoes that we use for sauce. And so the cherry tomatoes we dehydrate, and we use them for just like sun-dried tomatoes in oil packed with our garlic and our basil and our oregano, and we pack those. We also eat them on salads. The other ones we use for tomato sauce, ketchup, barbecue sauce, diced tomatoes like for chili. So that's kind of our tomatoes. So one of the things that we like to do with our tomatoes, and this is kind of nice to get our daughter involved because she's 9 and she likes to help, and she's done this over the years, is especially when the tomatoes first start getting flowers, we come down the rows and we just tickle the flowers because both the male and the female part of the flower, for a tomato plant, both the male part and the female part are in that flower, and so you can increase your pollination rate just by tickling the flowers as you go down the rows. And as we've noticed over the last couple of years, there's less and less bees, and so we kind of have to do a little bit of that work ourselves, at least on the tomatoes. The other thing that we do to help with pollination is we order through a place called Crown Bees, and they bring us mason bees and leaf cutter bees, and we have a house that we put them in here. They don't sting, they don't have honey to guard, and so they're friendly, and they're fuzzy, and so when they go in the flowers, they do a really good job. and so they kind of just take care of our garden all by themselves. So see how it's shaped? It's a red ox heart tomato, and so it's shaped like a little heart, which is cool. But anytime you like have those weird cross breed fruits like that, they're a little bit more of a challenge to get a bunch of them and keep them healthy. So, but we plant these in these grow bags, and the reason we do this is because every year I'm kind of bad at counting, and so I start these all from seed in my basement. And as we start them from seed, we always end up with a few extra plants, and I feel guilty just throwing them away. And so these grow bags are really nice because they simulate a more natural growing environment than putting them in a pot. If you have a ceramic pot or plastic pot, the roots will hit the sides of the ceramic pot, and then they'll spiral and it'll become root bound. Whereas with these, they'll hit the sides of the grow bag, but they won't spiral. They'll just kind of stop where they are. And so it's a little better for the plant. It's easier to carry around, and kind of easier to water and take care of. It doesn't dry out as fast as a ceramic pot does.
Where did you find these?
Just on Amazon. Pretty cheap, probably a couple bucks for each one.
Wow.
And then you put a bag of dirt in them and call it good.
No, this is perfect for like people who live on like balconies, like rooftop, urban garden, or if they are renting and they can't put in an actual in-ground garden. Like this is just beautiful.
Yeah, and then you can move them where you need to. The handles make it nice that if you want to put them in more sun or move them around because there's going to be a really windy day or there's going to be a storm or something like that, you can get them out of the way. Obviously, they won't get as big as they will in the normal earth garden, but they're a little more disease resistant here because they're not susceptible to all the same bacteria and stuff that come out of the dirt. Okay.
Oh, basil.
Yeah, that's our fresh. That's our second round. And all of our onions.
Lettuce.
This is where our onions were. So we originally planted garlic back here, and then onions, and then we plant the garlic and the onions first because you can get them in like right after the frost, and then of course garlic you get in October, and then you're picking it probably a little bit before July 4th. So that's done when this stuff gets big, so you can kind of cycle it through, so you can make very efficient use of the space. So you can see the cool thing about this is you can just pick as you walk underneath the thing. That's kind of fun. The thing that we've kind of embraced, and you can tell if you look at this side, these are cucumber plants that we started in the house from seed. These are cucumber plants that we started from seed just in the ground. And so if you're thinking to yourself, I'm scared to just put a seed in the ground because it might not grow, it's easier to do it inside. Beans, cucumbers, squash, they're very sensitive to root disturbances. They would rather, as a plant, have you start them outside and just keep growing. And you can tell just by doing this that even though I started these like a month earlier than I started these outgrew them tenfold. Because they were started outside. This is kind of this is just cool to do just because it's fun to look at. Butternut squash. They grow up, and it's kind of amazing to me like how they just hang down like this, and they don't fall off. So. So if you were to plant these in your garden, they would get as big as my other squash, and they would take over everything, and they'd be unhealthy, and they'd get sick. Planting them on here, I can plant double the amount of plants, and they just go up, and they crawl all the way over. Yeah, the bees come in and out of there. They're kind of done for the year now. Mason bees go first, and then leafcutter bees come second.
What's the difference between leaf cutter bees and mason bees?
So leaf cutter bees, you know that they're on your plants because they cut little pieces out of the leaves, and then they use that to form their nest, as it were. They use the materials from the leaves, and they're smaller. Mason bees look more like a bumblebee. They're bigger than them, and the mason bees will use mud materials to fill their nest so that they can reproduce for the next year.
Very cool.
I don't know what the stat is. They say that those type of bees are exponent. There's a percentage out there, but they're exponentially more. They're more efficient pollinators because they're not interested in making or protecting honey. They just have to do this, and then they're done.
Yeah, they're one job. Very focused. All right. What do you like about this?
I like them because they're green and they're not as big as the other peppers, and they're called jalapenos.
What's your favorite way to eat a jalapeno?
My mom likes to stuff cream cheese in them or put them in like use them for cowboy candy. I would probably eat it in cowboy candy because I don't really want to eat it whole.
It's pretty spicy whole, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, he got burnt by the sun.
Oh, so is that what happens when they turn purple?
Yeah.
Yep.
It means they're exposed to the sun a little too much.
This year has been our best pepper year. We've never had this many peppers. The banana peppers, we've picked like 5 times already, and they just keep coming. Green peppers, we're on our 3rd go around, and they're just doing great.
So, how did you guys get into gardening? Like, what made you want to start this?
So, when I was a kid, I didn't have the ability to have a garden for a while because we lived in a place that didn't have a lot of space, and so I didn't think about stuff like grow bags and things like that back then. And so when we got our first house, my grandfather, coming out of World War II, he was big into gardening because that was the thing back then, have your victory garden. And so my grandfather would always have a couple tomatoes kind of thing. And so then when we had our first house as I was a kid, we planted a garden, and my parents had a restaurant. And so we would supply the restaurant with our tomatoes and things like that. And that was always fun for us to do. And then when I became a pastor, I ended up moving around for school and to 3 different states and stuff. And so when we moved to Michigan, kind of finally had the ability to plant something and be a little bit more stable in one spot. And so finding a good activity for my family and for my daughter to do. And once you eat the stuff that comes out of your garden, you kind of know why you do it, because it tastes a lot better. There's some appreciation from the fact that you put it in the ground. And we started smaller than what this is, and we started just buying them at the greenhouse, and then that grew into us experimenting a little bit and trying to start stuff from seed. And we realized we could do it a lot cheaper starting from seed. And the satisfaction in seeing this little thing in Michigan start in March, all of a sudden become 8 feet tall, is kind of a cool process to see. And so, yeah, I would say my grandfather, loving to do a couple tomatoes every year, and that experience from the past probably carried over. And now my wife and I and my daughter really enjoy doing it.
Fun visiting their garden. Such a cool space. They're doing so much in such a small plot of land. I'm really excited to see like what they'll continue to grow and do. Also want to incorporate a few of their ideas into our garden for next year. But thanks for joining us. Till next time, y'all. Take care. Bye-bye.